Okay, so Tavern Talk number 2. Hi, Attila. Um, Attila's joining us in chat here on Twitch. And yeah, basically what we're doing is, if you haven't watched the previous one, this is a follow-up to our episode 2, Forbidden Lands actual play episode. And yeah, just a bit to... This is for us to have a little chat about how things went, little things that came up with the rules and that sort of thing. So it's really, if you're interested in looking deeper into the Forbidden Lands rules as they applied in our game, where we may have got some things wrong, which we did this time. I did anyway. Or made little house rules about something to just kind of keep the flow going. Again, something that I kind of did on the fly. And just thoughts about how some of the mechanics work. This is basically what the purpose of this is. The running time, we're aiming for about an hour. You can go a little bit over that, a little bit under that. We're not going to be too kind of strict about it, but the kind of idea is to have it run for an hour. So that's the show. I'm joined by players. Let's see which way I have to point in real life. Eric on the stream anyway. Eric is to my left, and Charlotte is below me here. So, hi, welcome, and thanks for coming to our tavern. Oh, I need to put some music on, don't I?
Hold on. Let's have some music.
Yeah, I was still going to do that too.
There we go. We should have some ambient tavern music starting now. So yeah, cheers.
Yeah, cheers everyone.
Right. So the first thing I talked about in our last one, which is something I wanted to start doing every time we do one of these tavern talks, is about my prep as a GM. Yeah, so in this episode, we started off knowing that we were going to have a combat. Our episode 1 finished with some enemies being spotted, and then we kind of left on a cliffhanger. So I knew straight away, kind of made things really easy for me when it came to prep, because I could plan an entire combat encounter knowing that everything had led up to that, which is, for me as the Theater of the Mind GM, that's quite hard to do on the fly. If a combat comes up kind of, randomly, or like through a random encounter roll or something, it's kind of harder to do that on the fly. I can still do it quite happily, but there's a little bit, it's a little bit more pressure on to have that, to kind of how much you can prep, etc. So, and also because I want to take this slow, and I want to make sure everything kind of went as smoothly as possible, I did spend a bit of time prepping the tools that we were using, which we'll talk about, and like how to do notes and things like that. So the first thing is I use Miro, M-I-R-O, which is an online whiteboard. I don't use any of the virtual tabletops. I'm not using any of them at the moment, mainly because Forbidden Lands support is only in Roll20, and I really don't like Roll20. So, yeah, I wouldn't use a different virtual tabletop because I don't use battle maps or things like that, which is mainly what they focus on. The only thing that would tempt me to use them is if they had interactive character sheets and dice built in. And again, only Roll20 has that, and again, I don't like how it's implemented. I don't like the platform. So I use a bunch of kind of a myriad number of tools that are all kind of online and free for running the game. Hi Miyagi, cool. So yeah, so Miro is the first thing I set up. Now let me just actually open this because it would be kind of cool to show it off. Means I'm going to have to create a very quick overlay. I can probably do this very quickly. Let's see. Let's test how quickly I can.
I'm sure you can. You're well practiced by now.
Your confidence is assuring. There we go. It's up already.
See? And well placed.
Look at that. That was quick. Okay. Like a well-oiled machine.
Almost like you know what you're doing.
Almost.
No.
Almost.
Almost.
So we're going to wait for it to load here. But basically what we did here... I've completely changed it since our last session. Yeah.
So should we turn away? Like, is there
No spoilers. I've just kind of... So this is something I've done since in prep for if we need to have combat in the future. But one of the things I did... the main thing I did here is I put a combat guide. I pasted... somebody had created this on Reddit, I think. This Lloyd094 at the top here. Or it could have been on the... I don't know. I don't remember which... where I found it exactly. But it's a little, combat cheat sheet, and I pasted it in here as an image so that any one of us could reference it, because all the players can come onto this board as well. Or if I needed to reference something as well, all of the combat kind of rules are there.
Yeah.
The other thing I did is I had images of all of the players, and I had images of a Saurian like this. There's the Saurian there, and I had taken some. I basically have had some of these cards, which are shared by Free League, and people use them on like Roll20 and stuff, or other virtual tabletops. So I had the PNGs for these already. I dropped all 10 of those in for initiative, and then that was kind of the main prep. And then all I did during play is I would grab one of these, which is locked, I think. Why can I not move it? There we go. I would grab one of these and I'd move it like as a card was drawn. Let's say that Eric drew for Arlek. Eric drew a 5. I would just drag the 5 and I'd stick it on his picture. That's how I was doing it in the game. Yeah. What I'll do now is I'll just leave this exactly as it is. This grid at the bottom here, and I'll drag someone's picture and pop it in the grid over their number. And I'll do the same with enemies. I'll just pop the enemies in, and then if you're swapping initiative, I can just quickly swap your place around, and then this grid basically stays like that the whole time. I'd actually probably duplicate, so I'd duplicate Arlek's picture, and that way I would have I could see up here. I've got these little post-it notes too for everybody, where I've got like your stats and how much damage you've got, and then if you have any conditions like you're sleepy or you're tired or hungry, I'll type those in here, and also any notes I need to do. So this is just a really quick overview of tracking damage, which is important in combat. So that's what I would do in future. But so that was something I did in prep. As I brought these cards in, I put the images in of the characters, of the PCs, and the enemy I knew was going to be in there. So that's one thing I did. So that was with Miro. Let me just bring that. Let's take that away. The other thing I did is I got index cards out. I use index cards a lot for role playing when I'm GMing. And what I did is I wrote down the Saurian stats on an index card, and then on another index card I wrote down a list of all of the like PCs and their names, and the like how many Saurians there were. I put them on the list as well, with a column next to it to put initiative, and then basically like numbered columns for each round. And the idea there is that I can track how much damage each of them are taking per round, and I can leave notes on the side next to them. It's not super elegant, but it's something I've been doing for a long time for every game. Is just I like to have a tracker on individuals, how much like wounds and stuff they have left. It works quite quick in practice. Obviously, if you are using a virtual tabletop, a lot of them have like that built in. So if someone takes damage, you can kind of like adapt a number that kind of hovers around their token or something like that, which is quite handy if you're using virtual tabletops for that sort of thing. Anyway, we might migrate to virtual tabletop for combat in the future, but we'll see. No promises on that. Yeah. So that's kind of it. That was kind of my prep. The other thing I did was I made a sketch of the area, a very rough drawing of the area, and had to think about how I wanted the combat to go in terms of tactics for the enemies. And there's a cave at the back of so there's like a pond in the middle of the area, and there's a cave at the back of it where the prisoners were being kept. And I wanted to like think about like how things would happen with that a little bit. And that was
Reminds me, I wanted to draw a map, and we could compare my map with your map and see how close our ideas of this area were.
Sure. I think I have my map here somewhere. No, I have no idea where my map is because I've got a new desk since we've played, and I tidied everything. I have no idea where things are now. So it was on my desk. It's gone now. Anyway, we can compare afterwards if we find them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my prep basically. For combat, I kind of wanted the combat to take the whole session as well. I hadn't planned to try and breeze through it. But remember, this stream is all about teaching people how Forbidden Lands works. This being our second episode only and the first time we're running combat, I wanted to make sure it was slowed down and people understood how the whole process worked. That's also why I didn't make it too challenging. Only 2 enemies. Even though there were 3 Saurians, I only threw 2 of you at the start. I could have made it a lot harder. But I wanted to use that as this is sort of like a tutorial, if you will. Which, if I was GMing for a normal group, I would never do anything like that. It would be a lot deadlier. Yeah. So that was my prep. Cool. So I had a quick listen back to the video as well after in prep for this tavern talk, and thinking of like things that came up that I may have forgotten about that I kind of wanted to, I had thoughts on but didn't actually talk about them, or maybe I quickly said something during the episode. And I've made a note of some of them. And the first one that came up was kind of near the beginning of the combat. There was a Saurian behind a tree, and Ed's character Key shot his bow at the Saurian. And this highlights an aspect of Forbidden Lands rules which some people might not really like. I have mixed feelings on it, but ultimately I'm kind of okay with it. And that is that Ed rolled a success on his marksmanship roll to hit the Saurian. But the Saurian was behind a tree, and a tree has an armor. So any cover has armor. That's how it's handled. And so I rolled the armor of the tree, and I got 2 successes. So it negated the success of Ed's bow. And some people might not like the fact that that's how it's handled. They might think, okay, if someone's behind cover, surely it's harder to hit them. So maybe there should be a penalty to hit them first. But that's actually how armor works in this game. You can get a successful attack and a successful, marksmanship roll, like if you're using a bow, that sort of thing. And then damage is calculated. And then any armor that is there has a possibility to deflect some of that incoming damage. The only issue with cover is that it assumes that the thing doesn't hit the actual, like, the difference with armor is if there's a successful attack, narratively, you know that the blow has landed, right? Whereas with cover, it's like the bow wouldn't have landed. The blow would have had gone into the cover, and that's how we did it. The arrow hit the tree trunk and didn't hurt the Saurian. So that's something I just wanted to quickly mention because there's lots of ways you can handle that sort of thing. How cover's handled in games, and I don't want to spend too long on it, but it's kind of an interesting way of handling it that Free League have done with Forbidden Lands, and in fact all the Year Zero games. I don't know if either of you have thoughts on it.
I like it. I mean, it works. I mean, yeah, you could think of it as like applying a penalty to your ability to hit, but in the end, like it kind of works out in a different way. To kind of be the same thing. I think it's good. It's a good system.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it.
And
yeah.
I think there's something I didn't do quite right there as well, which is I think you add the armor of the combatant to the armor from the. I'm not sure. Actually, you would do that. No, I don't think you would do that because you'd want to know so. if you had a really strong attack. Let's say you did like 5 or 6 damage. You'd want to know whether the cover got completely destroyed before it got whether the cover was obliterated in the process.
So I think that's a thing, for like Mutant Year Zero. That's definitely true. I think that's something that they actually talk about in the errata for the second.
Okay, I'll let you look.
Yeah. How did you know? Let's see. Just page 105, cover is not degraded by damage. So in this case, you'd want to track them separately because your armor could be damaged, whereas the tree isn't going to be damaged.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's something I would probably house rule as well, depending on what you're trying to do. Not with a bow and arrow, but if you're using like an axe and there's a tree, then I would certainly degrade the armor of the tree.
Maybe, I can see that. Or like a door or something.
Yeah. And again, we've got Mutant Year Zero to fall back on where it has rules for degrading armor of cover, and that's very easy to just plug and play directly into Forbidden Lands, which is something I'm more than happy to do. Anyway, that's cover. Charlotte, did you have any thoughts on cover?
No, I think it's handled rather decently on that aspect.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think penalties to your to a player's like skill test, it's kind of frustrating as a player, right? Because you've invested you've invested in this thing. You've got a good weapon theoretically. You've got high skill. You're built. You've thought, okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to push or not, but I don't think I'm full health right now, so I've got a really good chance of doing this. And you say, well, the person's hiding behind a tree, so that's -4 dice because it's a tree. How are you going to hit that person? Again, logically that makes sense to me, but then I can see players kind of getting a little bit annoyed with that, the lack of the lack of options or being gimped for that, which again for me isn't a big deal because it's cover, right? Same thing would happen for a player if they're hiding behind cover. It should be hard to hit them. And I kind of it's just different ways to handle it. And I also have I don't know how I feel about it. I'm kind of okay with it. I don't really feel strongly about it, but it's something that came up when I remember listening to it and thinking, okay, yeah, so he got a successful roll, but it kind of just meant that he didn't hit. It kind of felt a little bit odd, but that's how it works. Cool.
He hit. He hit exactly what he was aiming for.
He hit what he was aiming for, but yeah, the tree was between him and his target.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so now that I've had a second to think about that a little bit, so let's say I'm hiding behind a tree, and for one reason or another, not that it's my fault, I pissed off Erlich.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, you're fine then, because my range.
I think I'm gonna need to get my book
terrible.
here. Hold on. Yeah, go on.
So then he's trying to take shots at me. And like I said before, it was not my fault. I didn't do anything to deserve this.
With a bow, right, you said?
With a bow, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So every single time he takes a shot, if I'm hiding behind that tree, the armor of the tree comes into play.
Yeah.
So if he rolls shit successes and shit everything, there's a good chance that as long as I'm behind that tree, I'm never getting hit.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless I
you know what? For this system, since that's the way it is, that's the way it is. Overall, I'm not sure I like that aspect of it. I think I would prefer having something put onto the roll itself, like a bit of a difficulty.
Yeah.
I mean, in effect, it is, right? Because what you're rolling for is successes, and the tree has a good chance of taking away your successes. So it's kind of like applying on different sides. What it does do is it doesn't affect like pushing or anything like that, which I think is probably better, right?
Yeah, because if it was a negative modifier, it would take away skill dice, and skill dice are the ones that when you push don't give you a greater chance of success with no possibility of a skull of a skull on the ones dice. So pushing becomes much more dangerous if there are negative modifiers. So that's possibly why that's the case. Thinking it through a little bit.
But
yeah, I don't know. I think if I was to. I'm always this the other thing is I'm looking at a lot of these rules when it comes to things like Pitchfork and the other games I'm working on, and thinking about can anything be changed in a different way? Does it add anything? Right. Does it fit the tone or the themes of the other games I'm working on? Rather than just using exactly what it is, I'm kind of questioning everything and seeing making a conscious decision about including mechanics in my own games. And that's one of them that came up, and I think there are strengths and weaknesses to both. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Personally, I like to know, did I hit my target or not? Did the tree step in play? And that's how I would look at it from my player perspective is, did I actually hit what I'm trying to hit? Or did I hit the tree that they're sitting behind? But with the way that this system works, like you were saying, it might be harder to get that put in there and have it easily dealt with. I mean, we can do anything with any system, but can we do it easily? And does it make sense? And what does it affect? This is probably the easiest way to handle it. Put the armor on the tree, and then go from there.
Yeah. Yep. Well, yeah. I really make sense. I don't want to spend like half an hour on cover because it's something I don't actually feel that strongly about, but I have an opinion, and it's kind of like I'm kind of tempted to let rip, but
we'll save that for your next
my next design
ramble on Mud and Blood. How do you feel about cover?
Yep. Or my design diary for when I get to cover for
exactly
Pitchfork. I can go into the deep dive
Let's
on
hear
that
it.
and do my own take on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was initiative. In a similar way, we did initiative by the book. Now, we had a chat after. I don't know if we did it online or if we did it after we stopped streaming. I think after we stopped streaming. We had a little chat all together about initiative. And I had done a system with it here online, which I've done with my home group back home, which is I fanned the cards out and kind of did this and said, tell me when to stop, and then picked a card. And it's a little bit slow. So everyone was happy in future that I shuffle the deck, and then I just, for each person, one at a time, I draw a card off the top of the deck, and that's your initiative. Everyone's happy with that. So that's what we'll do in future, so to speed things up a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's the easiest way.
In theory, I could even do that in prep if everyone's happy. because I think everybody, hopefully all the players trust me. I could even do that in prep for running a combat, but I think it's more fun to do it on stream, like
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Cool. So, what are your thoughts on initiative? Because I know people who hate card-based initiative. My favorite form of initiative is not at all card-based. It does involve a dice roll. Well, lots of dice rolling, in fact. But yeah, I wanted to hear your thoughts on initiative, because it's so many games handle it in so many different ways. And in fact, even in the Year Zero engine, there are only 4 games. Well, all the games other than Tales from the Loop have initiative. Forbidden Lands was the first game that introduced card-based initiative, and now all of the games have card-based, and it's made it into the OGL as well. So it looks like going forward, all of the Free League Year Zero games are going to have card-based initiative. However, Mutant Year Zero, I think Coriolis also has a dice roll. Yeah, they both you roll a d6, and I don't know the official take now on Mutant Year Zero, because they've changed it in so many errata. My take on it is that you roll a d6 and you add your agility value to it, but I think it's just a straight d6, which is how it's done in Coriolis as well. There's no trait modifies that, unless you get a tie, and then your agility comes in to break a tie, I think. But yeah,
and there are talents that apply to it.
And there are talents, of course, talents that can increase your initiative roll and stuff like that. And in fact, in Forbidden Lands, there are talents that can affect your initiative. There's a talent that will let you draw 1 or more extra cards when you're doing initiative.
One of my characters has that, so
yeah,
I see it a lot.
So yeah, what are your thoughts?
I like it. It's fine. I mean, it might not be like the coolest system. Like, there's like different ways to handle it that seem like kind of clever and cute, and then that can be fun, but it's fine. Like, it works, and it's sort of built into the rules, so I'm fine with it.
Okay. Charlotte?
Yeah, I think, now don't quote me on this may change in 24 hours, but as far as initiative goes, I'm not fickle. I kind of like just one stat, like a stat that's generated from, say, if we're playing, we had Soulbound playing yesterday, and you take your body and your something else and you add them together, and that's your awareness, I think it was.
Okay.
You take that, add them together, and that's your
initiative. Okay, so
Yeah,
it's like a static number.
Yes. Yeah. No, there are times when you maybe caught flat-footed or whatever, or you're surprised and other factors come to play. But overall, I don't know, one less thing to roll every single time a round comes up makes the game a hell of a lot faster. And it makes it easier for me as a GM to...
You say that, though. You say that, though. There is something you have to think about, which is, as a GM, if you have initiative which is based on a number, you have to create and track when people are going. It takes time to set that up. And if people change, you have to keep track of that as well. Right? There's a faster way. But yeah, I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, let's hear the faster way, Matt.
Well, the faster way is my preferred method, and it's what I'm going to put into Pitchfork. And it is basically... I'm ripping it out of a game called King of Dungeons, which Liam introduced me to on the Mud and Blood podcast. And basically the way it works is you roll dice every single round. Which, when I first heard this, and this is actually what they do in Mothership as well. And when I first heard this, I was like, oh, fucking no way. Like, you have to roll every round for initiative. That's going to slow play down. It offers nothing. But in fact, in play, it actually makes combat run faster. Because it is just a single quick dice roll. And the GM doesn't have to track anything, doesn't have to track any initiative whatsoever, which for me as a GM is incredible. It's an incredible thing to experience. Basically, the way it works in King of Dungeons is it's based on the 6, because it's an OSR game, it's based on the 6 D&D stats. And basically, in the first round, you would roll Wisdom, which is kind of like perception, I guess, or like common sense, that sort of thing. And it basically means that people who are kind of clever are going to act first. because they're going to be able to react to this new situation when combat is starting quickly. In the second round, the quick people, so after things have started kicking off, the quick people are then going to be coming into their element, and that's where dexterity, being the kind of agility stat, comes into play. And then finally, from rounds 3 onwards, it's a game of attrition, and it's about who has the stamina to keep going with combat, and therefore you roll Constitution every round. And I really, really like that. So in Pitchfork, I've already thought of a way of implementing this, tying it to stuff I can't quite talk about yet. For various reasons I can't really divulge. Sound really mysterious. But basically, I want to do something similar. So the first round is based on your perception, your wisdom, if you will, that sort of thing, where it's how clever are you, how quick are you to react to the situation. Second round will be based on the agility or equivalent stat. In Pitchfork, I might be moving to a complete skill-based model, so in that case it would be like athletics. How quickly can you react? And then from the third round onwards, it's going to be all about your stamina, your vitality, keeping you in the game. And I've got some clever twists on how King of Dungeons do it, with which stats I'm tying into those 3 things. But again, the beauty for that, in my opinion, is that although you do have to roll every round, if the player fails that roll, they're failing it because they know either if that first round, if you fail that roll, it means you weren't able to react quick enough, like you were kind of taken by surprise, and your brain hasn't switched itself into gear yet. I like that. Second round, it's how quick are you. I like that as well. So that even the characters who are faster naturally because they have higher skill and speed or whatever, they're going to be the ones who are going to kind of be able to quickly get in there and attack back. And then finally, this game of attrition where your stamina comes into play, I think is also really exciting. And and rolling on a stat that degrades is what's going to happen in Pitchfork for that one. And that means as combat goes on, you want combat to finish as quickly as possible, basically, unless you're winning. Well, I guess you always want it to finish anyway.
Yeah, you always, yeah.
Yeah. So, Melty, hi. We're talking about, this is episode 2's Tavern Talk, so we're kind of doing a deep dive into topics that came up in our episode 2, Forbidden Lands. So, anyway, I've
not convinced.
Yeah, I mean, you've played Mothership, so you've run that system.
Yeah, but I don't remember that part.
It's fine. I'll run it for you. The real beauty of it comes behind the GM screen when you're a GM, and it works that way because you don't have to track anything. You don't have to write a single thing down. All you've got in front of you are the stats for the enemies, and it comes down every round. It's just like, okay, everyone roll. You just say everyone roll whatever the stat is. Everyone rolls, and if you succeed, then you get to go before your enemies, and you basically just decide amongst yourselves who's going first. And then if you failed your roll, the enemies go before you, and then you go at the end if you failed your roll.
Okay, so then you say you don't have to track anything, but indeed you do, because you're the one telling them, okay, roll for this, roll for this, roll for this. Each and every round, you're changing what you're rolling for.
Well, no, just 3 rounds.
But still, that's something that you have to keep on stating instead of sometimes there's a lot going on.
It's a lot less It's a lot less tracking than having to and slow down in the game to then writing down. Not Corona, I promise. Just beer going down the wrong pipe. Oh my god.
That's happened.
What was I saying? Oh,
you're
a lot faster
tracking.
Faster than because you can just have it on a piece of paper in front of you, like round 1 wisdom, round 2 agility, round 3 plus constitution, and you can just reference that very quickly. And whereas with a combat tracker, you're kind of having to write down, it depends on how many people are involved in the combat as well. And that's the beauty. If you have a big combat, it's going to be a lot slower to track individual initiative values, especially if they're moving, if you have a game where they can change, than if you have this other method. Now, there's another way of doing this, and this is something that Eric did in in his Harnmaster game, and that was he outsourced tracking initiative to one of the players.
Yeah,
so
I stole that from Liam, by the way.
It's a great way to fix the problem.
Try that. Yeah, well, especially if it's fixed, it's not so bad. At the time, I didn't know how much you hated tracking initiative, but I didn't nominate you either.
I mean, that's kind of how I do it. I don't say, okay, so this is who's next. I go, who's next? Because they know where their initiatives are amongst themselves.
But they don't know where the enemies
my
are.
NPCs.
They don't know where the
Bringing
enemies
this back to Forbidden Lands, though, I mean, that's actually another strength of doing the cards is that it's not much that, like, you know what everyone has. They have it. They can show it to you. You know, like,
the
it's
cards
kind of there on the table.
The cards, especially when you're playing Forbidden Lands physically, I quite like the cards for that. It's a little bit more fiddly online, but I think with with Miro, again, I'm just going to flash it up on the screen again. I really like how I've set this up, where I've got the numbers and I can just drag stuff around. So I don't feel I feel that's going to be fairly fast. I can just drop people into like a grid, and job done, right?
To me, the only the significant drawback of the cards is that unless you get one of the talents that affect it, your initiative is not affected by your character whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right. And I can see people kind of not liking that. But again, you can get these like lightning reflexes. You pick that up, and you have a character advantage with it. So yeah, it's good. It's not the coolest and greatest, but I like it.
Yeah, I think when it comes to this, with exceptions, there's no wrong answer. It's just whatever you prefer and whatever fits the system.
Sure. But everyone's got a preference, right?
Yes. Which
we wouldn't be here talking
about
wrong. This otherwise.
We won't be spending so much time talking about initiative. Right, let's move on. Because there's other stuff. None of this stuff actually really came up in the game. This is more just like cover and initiative, or just things I'm kind of interested in. So let's talk about the first thing that came up in the game, and this is where I got a rule wrong. Towards the end of the combat, one of the Saurians was fighting with Harry's character, Kark, and I was trying to make the Saurian flee the combat, which it did in the end. It did manage to flee. However, I got the rules for it completely wrong, and that's something I wanted to just quickly mention here, is how the rules actually work and how it should have run. So what it was happening was Kark and the Saurian had closed within arm's reach. They were kind of fighting each other within melee, and then I wanted the Saurian to leave, and I was only looking at the flee mechanic in the book, and I forgot. Eric reminded me afterwards that there is actually a fast action called retreat, and that is actually the fine print of flee says you have to be at near range or greater to attempt to flee. So that should have triggered something like, oh, this Saurian isn't at near reach; it's within arm's reach. What does that mean? How does it get away? How does it disengage from combat? And basically, retreat is a disengage action. It's a full slow action, a move action. And what it basically does is it guarantees you to move away to near reach, but you have to roll move. If you fail your move roll, then the person you're disengaging from gets a free attack on you. Otherwise, you get away scot-free. Retreating is a fast action, and fleeing is a slow action. So you could take an entire turn to retreat as a fast action safely away, which might mean an attack on yourself. And then after you've retreated, you spend your slow action to do the full retreat. And the full retreat is also a skill roll. In fact, I'll flash up the rules for it because I've got them here. So fleeing the conflict, this is from Forbidden Lands. It says, if you're losing a fight, it might be better to retreat and perhaps return with backup. I won't read the whole thing, but the basically what it's saying here is that your distance from your enemy determines how easy it is, or whether you get a modification to your move roll to flee the combat. So if you're quite close to somebody, they can still, like, you're turning your back on them, they will still be able to kind of come and try and stop you from fleeing. If you fail your flee roll, you remain, it says here, you remain in combat with your opponent and cannot get away. You stay at the same distance, so they're kind of keeping you pegged down. They can also inflict additional negative consequences for you, but you can also attempt to flee the next round as well. And again, because it's a slow combat, it's only something you can do once per round. You can't do it like twice in a round. So yeah, that's how it works. That's what I got wrong, and that's that.
My one big complaint with this rule, other than it being two separate roles, which is neither here nor there. I mean, it could be a problem, but it's like there's synonyms like retreat and flee. Like, it's just made to be confusing. It should have used.
I agree.
like a.
I think
I mean, I guess
disengage
still,
works a bit
yeah,
better in my head.
disengage. I think is what people would think of for the retreat option. Yeah.
Yep.
And then flee could be well, flee is flee.
Flee or retreat. I mean, you're retreating from combat or
Yeah.
Okay. So
Flee
that
is
was
more evocative though.
Flee is more evocative, yeah. A flee works too, but I think it's the retreat as the disengaging thing is a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's in my head
Withdraw.
now. I won't forget it next time. And Eric will remind me if I do forget.
Yeah, sure.
Before we talk about magic, which I know Charlotte wants to talk about, I wanted to quickly mention talents, because magic ties into talents, so it's kind of, we can do a little segue into there quite nicely. One thing that came up was I at one point I was reminding Harry about what his talents were. And in fact, when I was quickly looking at his character sheet, I was looking for a profession talent, and I ended up focusing on a general talent, which is kind of embarrassing when I was looking back on it. But the point I wanted to make here is that in a game like this, and again from a GM's perspective, a GM has to keep track of a lot of things. It's in the games I run, it is up to players to keep track of their talents and to remember to use them. If they forget to use them, it's on them, not on the GM. Especially when you have like 4 players, it's a lot to keep track of. Try to keep track. Like if you're playing a game with 2, maybe 3 players, then maybe it's a bit easier to keep track of what talents they have. But all of you have 3 or 4 talents each. So we're talking something like 15 talents altogether. I cannot keep track of all that. Some of them are really easy to remember, like the kin talents. 2 of you have the same ones, for example. They're fairly easy for me to remember because there's only a handful of them anyway. Yeah. But the profession talents, again, some of the profession talents I'm aware of. For example, Arlek has the bag of many things. And Charlotte's character has, Lyria has blood magic. So it's like the talent that allows her to use that kind of school of magic. But I can't never remember which ones the martial characters have, because they're not as unique to me. It's either one's going to be like the path of the blade or the path of the shield or whatever. Like, and the one, oh no, I do know which one, Key has. He's got path of the beast. No, I don't actually know.
Path of the Forest, maybe?
I think you might have Path of the Forest. But anyway, the point is, I'm not keeping track of these things, and it's up to the players to keep track of them. So I think that's something that probably I could have mentioned a bit better in play. And just something to kind of reflect on as a GM as well, is that I should probably be prompting you as players to not forget about your talents a little bit more often, especially when we're things like combat situations, because a lot of the talents come into play in combat. When it's like not your turn and you're waiting, what you should be doing is looking at your character sheet and saying, oh, what can I actually do when my turn comes up? And that way you're kind of quickly reacting. So anyway.
Just prompt Harry.
Yeah. So Charlotte, magic. Yeah. Let's talk about magic. What you kind of wanted to, is there anything specific you wanted to talk about when it comes to magic? We haven't really seen much of it yet.
Well, and that's it right there, is we haven't really had a chance to see much of it yet, because the way that magic is handled in Forbidden Lands is not like you would expect it to be if you're coming from like a D&D or
a higher fantasy game
background.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas you have all of these spells at your fingertips, literally sometimes, to be able to cast every single round, fireball, arcane bolts, shackle, whatever you want to do. For this, I need to get willpower, which I finally got 1 point of willpower. Oh, yeah. So I can cast 1 spell, and then my spells are not big game changers. Like if I want to take a risk and have some kind of magic blowback on me or my group, then I could boost it up to level 2. From at that point, I get like fire or incinerate or something, where I need fire on hand to help.
Well, no. The ingredients in Forbidden Lands, they're not a requirement. They make it safer to cast, right?
Right. So if I'm overcasting, I would want to have a reagent on hand to help lessen my chances of fucking things up.
The ingredient makes it more powerful.
Grimoire. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Grimoire makes it. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So it would make it more powerful. That's true. But like, I get it. Like, you want to stack all the cards. Like, you want to stack everything in your favor, right? Because magic is deadly, and you want to get the most bang for your buck at the smallest cost to yourself. That's of course.
So like, I am the only character that has armor. I think.
You're actually a warrior, Charlotte.
No, you're the only one who has decent armor. I think somebody's got leather. I think possibly. I think Kark has leather armor, possibly as a fighter.
Possibly.
But maybe not, because we did random character generation. You might have been the only one. I think you are maybe the only one who has any armor of any kind.
I've got armor and a helmet.
But you've got chainmail armor, which is even better than normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I am the tank of the group, and I'm also the mage.
If there's ever a forest fire, you can walk straight through it with no problem. We can't do that. But yeah, like combat wise, I think at the moment you're pretty. You just swing that axe. You just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, didn't I get all the kills last round or last game?
No, I killed one.
You got one. You got the only kill outside.
Right. Yeah. I went and saved Key.
Yeah.
The other Saurian fled. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, magic. There are people who really don't like the magic. I've since Forbidden Lands came out, I ran a game of it when it was in beta still, and I was very active on the forums before the Discord server existed. People comment on it. People complain about it a lot. It's a Marmite thing, which if you're not from Britain, it's a love or hate it type of thing. And I quite like it because it's a different take on it. It's they've explained their reasoning behind it, which is they want the willpower to build up and to be saved for like special occasions, and it to be something that you kind of you're not casting willy-nilly, because that's why the miscast tables are there as well. So it kind of lends itself more to a sword and sorcery type of feel, or darker, lower fantasy, however you want to kind of term that. And I think that's cool. I think that's all right. But I get the frustration. I've run it for several groups, and every group I've had a druid in one group the first time I ever ran it, and they were miffed. It was a one-shot. We knew we were doing a one-shot, and they didn't have a single point of willpower the entire one-shot. So it's like, I'm playing a druid. I chose a spell so I could use this spell, and I'm not able to use it. Because I think they were succeeding. Like, they rolled a couple of times, 2 or 3 times before we had the one in combat, and they succeeded. So they had they didn't push their roll. They didn't get any willpower, and I think a common house rule that I also would maybe consider in some maybe it could have been a good one in this campaign is that everybody starts with 1 willpower, because that's not over the top. It allows you a little bit of utility with your character, especially because we started off when everyone had traveled, and you could assume, especially for example Eric's character, who had gone through a traumatic event, probably had used his willpower at some point, right? Or had willpower to bank. And we could say the same for the other 3 who had been traveling already. That maybe there was we could make an argument for everyone having 1, for example. Whereas if you're starting everyone's comfortable in a village in a tavern, I'd be like, nah, you haven't got any willpower, because what stressful thing have you been doing? You haven't been traveling. You haven't been trying to survive. You haven't had anything happening to you. No. Anyway, hindsight's a wonderful thing. You've got your 1 willpower now.
Well, I think in a game that's intended to run as a campaign where it's more than just a one-shot, starting with 0 willpower and building up from there to help learn the game as it goes is awesome. But if you're just doing a one-shot, starting off with 1 willpower, I think would be more ideal, because like you're saying, we can get right into it then. You have this to spend. You can cast your 1 thing of magic you want to spend.
Yeah, I'm doing a one-shot next Friday, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I've already, they're getting 1 willpower to start. So.
And that's something after having done quite a few one-shots of it. I've never done it starting with 1, but the last one-shot I did, I again had people complaining about it. So I've now decided if I ever do one-shots of Forbidden Lands again, I will be starting with 1. Also, Mutant Year Zero, which this is based on, has every character starting every game with one mutation point, which is basically exactly the same. In fact, maybe you have 1 per mutation. So it's kind of, to me, it's not like you're not breaking anything. It's already there as a mechanic in the game this is based on, and as you said, in a campaign, it makes more sense to keep it at 0. And this is really a campaign game because of the hex crawling kind of focus and everything else, so you can kind of understand it. But anyway,
and you're not giving them 3 to start off with every single session like in Warhammer Fantasy. You're getting 1.
Yeah,
and they're hard to come by.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. All right, let's move on. We only have a couple more here, and then we'll turn questions over to anyone in chat if they've got any questions they want to ask. So if you're in chat and you have some questions, start thinking about it. You can even ask them now. We'll come to them. We got 2 more questions on the outline that we've got, and then we'll turn it over. So the next one I wanted to talk about was the action economy, which is Forbidden Lands is very traditional. You have initiative, which again uses cards. That's not, whether that's every game does initiative slightly differently, so I don't see that as a big deal. But once it's your turn, you have two actions, a fast action and a slow action. And that's very similar to many, many, many games. You could call it a maneuver and an action, and you're comparing it to games like D&D. I think they're called maneuvers and actions in that. I can't remember. But basically, lots of games have this, or some games have action points where you have a certain number of things you can do that cost different amounts of actions. In fact, Coriolis has action points. You have 3 action points you can do, and every action has a number assigned to it in terms of like how many it takes. That, to me, is fine. I'm used to that. I'm really I'd never had issues with this because that's just how games ran. When you have like traditional turn order, traditional combat, that's how it works. You got to think of a way to like allow people to do different things, to move and attack, etc. Until I played Mythras, and when I played Mythras, it was kind of like seeing something done in a completely different way that was easy to slot in with, very modular for existing systems, basically. The way it works in Mythras is that you have a number of action points, or whatever they call them. I'll call them action points for the sake of... I know Eric might be wanting to correct me because he's also was a player in this game.
No, they're action points. Yeah.
And so, like, in our game, all 3 of us had 3 action points. You could have 2. You could have up to, like, 5 if you're extremely... if you have, like, really strong wits. Or, like, whatever the stats were that contributed to your action points. And the idea is that every round is split into phases. And each phase you go through, you can do one thing. You can move, you can attack, you can do one single thing. And then you go through your turn order like that. Then you come to the next phase. And if you have another action point remaining, you can do something else. If somebody attacks you, you can defend, but defending takes one of your action points as well. So if you're very agile or very quick, you might have 5 action points. You can, like, in a single round, you can, like, move, attack twice, and defend yourself twice for 5 actions, right? But it's all happening in slices. And the thing I really like about this is that it feels like real-time combat in a way that I've never... while still having the turns and still having something that feels kind of traditional, it was like an eye-opener. Like, wow. It made combat much more tense. And like one of these things I didn't realize bugged me until after I kind of started reflecting on it was like, yeah, like I get to move and attack. Then the next round they get to move and attack. It was like, what if they're moving and I want to attack them while they're moving? Or it's like, where's the dynamic element to combat?
Yeah.
Which if you're doing it narratively, you can absolutely do, right? If you're doing narrative combat where you don't have any initiative, you don't have any turn orders, anything like that, that can be a great way to handle combat. I actually really like that as well. But if you want to have something more tactical and you want to do it like that, Mythras is incredible, and I'm going to try to port that into Pitchfork. Now, this is turning to me like kind of pimping Pitchfork out a little bit. Apologies.
Okay.
But it's something I wanted to mention because, again, while I was listening back to episode 2, it was striking me listening to the turn order and people thinking about what they wanted to do for their move and their action, or their slow and fast actions, and then like Harry asking if he could make a taunt for like where that costs us fast action or not. It's like having to think about this like action economy. It's kind of like, yeah, not that would change necessarily in a Mythras system, because then thinking about does that cost me an action point rather than a slow action. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's something that I've kind of recently discovered and really like. So just kind of wanted to bring it up. What are your thoughts on action economy?
Yeah, actually, I mean, so like if you're using the cards, like the advanced combat and Forbidden Lands, it's actually a lot like that.
Only for melee combat. Right.
Only for, yeah. So, and that's the thing, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, that sort of thing, it exists, but no one uses it.
Yeah. Oh, we will use it. We will be using it. We will be using it.
Oh, that's exciting.
The idea is again.
I'll have
remember,
my cards soon.
Remember that we're building up, right? We're building up to kind of we're learning as we go. And again, I did a very simple combat to do it like as a tutorial, and because of that, I did not want to introduce advanced combat. I want advanced combat to be stacked on top of after everyone's familiar with combat. So
Makes
we'll probably do a couple more normal combats if combat comes up, and I'll probably save it for a big duel with something interesting. But we will be using it. I plan on using it, so don't worry about that.
Cool.
But yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot to be said for the advanced combat as a set piece for big battles in Forbidden Lands.
Yes, exactly.
And we will be using it like that. But yeah, it only applies to melee combat because of how it's designed. It doesn't really work with ranged.
Yeah. But yeah, the Mythos thing is really cool, and I'm surprised I wonder if you could do the same thing in Coriolis because he has his action points as well.
I mean, they give actions cost action points, so that would kind of ruin it a bit. But you could theoretically do it for any game that has turn-based actions in it anyway. You just have to figure out how many people have how many actions.
Right.
But again, it's all little things to think about, not particularly difficult.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Charlotte?
I have none.
Okay.
I honestly don't recall our time on Coriolis well enough now to remember how we had
we didn't do
that
much
done
combat.
there. Didn't we do like one session almost? Like
We had
one
the-
per hour day?
I think we had the one session on board the pirate ship where you boarded the pirate ship.
Yeah.
Had the one shootout, and that
Where
was
I got hit.
yeah. And then then you went back. They boarded, and you had a very very quick and decisive battle back on your own ship, and that was it.
There was one on
Yeah.
a planet, and where one of the characters is choking another guy out. I seem to
Oh yeah,
recall.
when you were infiltrating the research base.
The compound.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That's right. But that was a bit more. Yeah, that wasn't like a full blown combat. I don't from memory. It was a bit
No.
more.
Didn't
Like,
someone like leap up into the air and shoot someone with a shotgun over cover? I seem to remember that. It was very
I do not remember that.
vivid. Wow. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
I didn't
No,
play in this game, by the way.
I think what it was when we were in the hold of the pirate ship, I ended up jumping off and then floating over the cargo, and
Yes.
somebody was
Yeah, yeah.
behind a box.
I remember that.
yeah, exactly. Oh man, that was great.
Yeah.
That was a
And
great
you also
moment.
surfed from the
Yeah.
from the pirate ship to your own ship. I remember that too.
With
Oh, I
the
don't
sniper
remember
rifle,
that.
trying to
Oh,
take
yeah.
out the guy who was trying to weld his way in or cut his way into our ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
now
was
I
like
remember.
the highlight of the whole
Yeah,
thing
that
for
was
me.
fun. Anyway,
Yeah.
nothing to do with Forbidden Lands. If you want to check that out, that's
Season 2.
That's an actual play on the Mud and Blood podcast of Coriolis, which I ran
Yeah.
for. Charlotte was one of the players, and then two others. Okay. The last thing I wanted to mention was house ruling. I did an on the fly house rule when we were playing, and that was when Ed wanted to. He had his bow. He had taken a shot at the Saurian. Then the Saurian, on its next turn, ran at him and threw a net. Before it threw the net at him, is closing distance with him. No, it had thrown the net at him. This is what happened. He'd thrown the net and entangled him, and Ed had managed to get out of it very quickly on his next turn.
Yeah.
So Ed wanted to know about how quickly he could draw a weapon. He had a hand. So at first, remember, he was using a bow and arrow, and okay, that was what he had equipped in his hands. He dropped it when he got when he was or it was maybe still in his hands, whatever. It was in his hands when he got the net thrown on him, and then he wanted to draw his hand axe or whatever his weapon. I think it was a hand axe. And I just said, because normally, according to the rules, that's a fast action, right, to draw a weapon. But I don't actually like that. I think if somebody has a main weapon, that you would assume it's easy to access, like on a belt or something, so you can just reach down and pull it out, right? Faster than how fast actions are described. So I just quickly did that as a house rule, and I said, if you have a hand weapon, I'm assuming it's in like a scabbard, or it's easy to access on like a belt loop or something. You can just reach down and it's in your hand. And I know lots of games do that. They allow you to equip a main weapon if it's like a weapon. Some games have like you can say whether something's on your belt, and if it's on your belt, you can access it quickly. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, like best left buried, right? Yeah, I think it's a great rule. Like, whether you have a sidearm, you can draw your sidearm. Like, that's what they're meant for.
Yeah.
You know, you have a sword or a hand axe in your belt, and you just take it.
Yeah.
Or a dagger. I mean, that's exactly what it's there for. That's why it's called a sidearm, and that's its purpose. Like, because, Key's main thing is his bow. Like, that's his main. But sometimes you need to draw the sidearm, right? And so I think that's a great rule.
Yep. So we wouldn't change accessing inventory or anything like that. That would still be like if you had something in your backpack or a sling sack or something like that.
Or the bow dropped on the ground.
Or the bow dropped on the board.
Action to grab.
You'd have to spend some kind of action to bend over and pick it up, of course. But just reaching down and just grabbing something is, Anyway, so that's it. That's everything I wanted to bring up.
In the future.
Do either of you have anything you want to bring up? Like this, we're 1 minute before 10 as well, which is perfect for an hour.
I've got nothing really. I think we kind of covered off everything that we came through. And
okay, over to the chat then. Does anybody in chat have anything they want to ask or mention or talk about? I've seen that Miyagi mentioned initiative as a save, which is the initiative. It's basically what I'm talking about in my system that I like. We'll see how that goes. I also need to play test it. But
I don't hate that. You know, you succeed, you go first. You fail, you go after the enemies. I don't hate that. In theory, I just haven't. No, you know, I am thinking about that now. I think I am remembering back to when we played Mothership, and that was kind of the way that
Mothership did it with agility every round. So you roll agility, and if you succeed, you go before the enemies. If you fail, you go after them. It's quick.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
Yeah. But there are people who think like any dice roll will slow things down. So only make every dice roll has to be extremely effective and extremely like important, and therefore rolling every round for combat sounds like a waste of stuff. But for me, like, combat is a life and death thing, right? So that to me is like kind of like an okay use for it. And I don't actually subscribe to the fact that you should only, like, the only time you should be rolling dice is when it's like you should be cutting out every dice roll. I think you should be rolling a dice roll when it's important to the story, or if there's a good mechanical reason for it. And anyway,
I'm trying to think of any initiative systems I don't actually like that much. And I think the only ones I really don't like is like it's kind of just like I don't like a die roll and then like you add a number to it. Like that's not my favorite. Like the cards are good. I like initiative as tests. That's pretty cool. Like there are different ways to do that. Troubleshooters has a neat one. Or fixed initiative or cards. Like I'm kind of pretty happy with all of them. Or even ones where like if I just want to simplify it, I'm just like, okay, you go first unless there's some reason.
Yeah.
Well, 2d20, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Conan, the players go first, then the enemies, and then if I want to spend Doom on my NPCs, I can get them to go first.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you stop thinking about initiative in the form of rolls, it kind of loses a lot of its bounds because, you know, I might be going first, but then you go and then someone else goes, and then that someone else sees it as the enemy's going first, and then they go, then the enemy again. It's perspective on that, on how the initiative actually plays out.
Yeah, it kind of brings it into the narrative sphere a little bit more. I did a campaign. I ran a campaign of Shadow the Demon Lord, which has fast and slow rounds, I think they're called. And it's kind of similar to Conan, but a little bit more tactical. I think Conan has one of the best ways of handling it, where you have something that feels a bit more like a traditional combat, but the lightest form of initiative possible. And I love Doom as a mechanic, as you both know. I just don't think it's suitable for every game necessarily, but I think it's really great. I really like that too.
But then that's it. There are so many different ways to handle initiative.
Oh yeah,
and each of them is dependent upon the tone of the game that you want to play, or that you want to run.
Yeah, absolutely.
So while one works for this system or this game, it won't work for something else because it just doesn't go with the way that you want it to feel. I mean, I'm running Punk Apocalyptic next Saturday, and it's the same thing. Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Yep.
You got your fast and your slow, and that's going to be interesting to run because I've never done it that way before.
Yep.
I've played one game of Shadow of the Demon Lord, but that's been about it.
Yep. I think for me, we mentioned systems that we don't like. The only one that I really don't like is when you are re-rolling for initiative every round, and it's tracking a slot. So the GM has to recalculate every round where people are going and when. I hate that.
No thanks.
As an idea. I've never run a game like that. I would never want to run a game like that, but that's also a popular thing that people choose. There's some other games as well, like I think Troika has you reaching into a bag and pulling out like a token. That's a kind of interesting kind of, and one of the tokens is like end of the round. So it could be that they reach in, two people have a go, could be both be your enemies, and then the end of the round comes. You didn't get to do anything that round. It adds a lot of tension, apparently. It sounds really, like, to me, it sounds really weird. I don't like the sound of it. At first blush, I didn't like the sound of it. But the more, or it might be Into the Odd, I can't remember. But anyway, the more I thought about it, the more I kind of like it as a kind of just reflecting the random nature of combat and how things can, like making things much more tense. And so everyone who plays it and raves about it says it makes combat so much more tense because you don't even know if you're going to get to go that round.
Right.
Which, yeah, I don't know. There'd be an argument. Some people would say you're penalizing your players or something, but it sounds interesting. I kind of want to see how it works in practice. But
yeah, I mean,
I'd be curious
it
to
sounds
play.
fun. Yeah.
There's no right way to do initiative, is there? But
No.
Anyway.
No.
Cool. So nobody's piped up with any questions in chat. So rather than going around and readdressing all of our
let's just go
topics
right back
again,
through.
I think we'll call it a day, or we'll call it a
stream.
We'll call it a stream.
On the stream.
So yeah, thanks very much for watching. If you are watching us on Twitch, or if you're on YouTube and you want to come and watch us while we're live in future, we're streaming on Twitch. And basically, the way Twitch works is if you follow the channel, then, which if you look at the bottom of this video, down there's like a little link that says Twitch TV Three Skulls Tavern. If you go to that and you're logged in or you have an account, click the follow button. Following us means that you'll get an email anytime we go live, and that just means like you'll get a chance to watch, or like you don't need to worry about like keeping tabs on social media or whatever. So yeah, anyway, so we stream. I'm streaming every Thursday and Sunday, sorry. Thursday and Sunday at 9 p.m. Germany time, which is where I am now, which is 7 p.m. GMT at the moment. And I'm going to be doing that for the foreseeable future. Thursdays are going to be a mix of chill days where I could be running something special, but if not, then I've got some video games lined up, quite a lot of video games lined up. I'm an avid gamer. I have more than 1,000 games in my Steam library, and I have had no time to play in recent time, like the last 2 years or so. So I'm trying to make time so I can actually play some games, and I'm going to try and I'm trying to choose games that I can use for inspiration for some of the tabletop games I'm working on. So I'm trying to use my time productively like that. Anyway, so for example, next Thursday, which is the next time I'm going to be streaming a second session of The Division 2, which is a kind of it's not really a survival game. It's like an action third-person shooter set in a post-apocalyptic Washington, D.C. And the reason I've chosen that one is because we're going to be running Twilight 2000 on the stream, and that's the video game that kind of is most similar in terms of theme to that. So yeah. Anyway, so that's why I'm streaming twice a week on that channel. I'm still going to be uploading everything other than the chill video games. I'm not going to be uploading to YouTube. Everything else will get uploaded to YouTube within a couple of days afterwards. And yeah, that's it. So if you want to get in touch with us, all the social media links are at the bottom of this video. You can see them right there. They'll also be in the hyperlinks. Will also be in the show notes over on YouTube when that goes live. And I think in the highlights reel, if you're watching the highlights reel of this, they'll put them in there as well. So go check if you want to chat with us. Then go to one of those links and chat with us.
We're
most active in
with
Discord
Miyagi right now.
Yeah, join the Discord.
Discord is the place where we're all very, very active, like very active. So yeah, cool. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.
Thanks everybody.
See ya. Thank you.
Ciao.